December 9, 1775. Great Bridge, Virginia. Before sunrise, Captain Charles Fordyce leads British grenadiers onto a narrow wooden causeway stretching across hundreds of yards of marsh and open water. Ahead of them waits Colonel William Woodford. He commands Virginia regulars, riflemen, and militia behind a small earthwork at the southern end of the crossing. The position is unfinished. His men have no artillery. Their supply wagons have been delayed. The only practical road between Norfolk and the Virginia interior runs straight across this bridge. Fordyce believes one hard charge will break the rebels. Woodford believes the British will have to cross open ground under concentrated fire. Only one of them can be right. The British advance in tight formation. The marsh prevents them from spreading out. The causeway keeps them exposed. Patriot sentries fire, fall back, and alert the main position. Then the Virginians wait until the redcoats are close. The first volley tears into the column. Fordyce is hit, rallies his men, waves his hat, and pushes forward again. The British keep coming until he falls only a few yards from the American works, his body struck repeatedly. The attack collapses. When the firing stops, Woodford's men have suffered one minor wound. The British have lost dozens. That morning, Virginia's royal governor still possessed soldiers, ships, and a base at Norfolk. What he no longer possessed was a road into the colony. And the colonel behind the earthwork had just made royal government in Virginia impossible. William Woodford is not one of the Revolution's most famous commanders. He did not deliver a legendary speech. He did not sign the Declaration of Independence. His name is rarely placed beside Washington, Henry, or Jefferson. But in December 1775, he commanded the battle that ended Lord Dunmore's ability to rule Virginia from land. To understand why Great Bridge mattered, we have to begin 8 months earlier with a small amount of gunpowder. On April 20, 1775, one day after the fighting at Lexington and Concord, Lord Dunmore ordered Royal Marines to remove gunpowder from the public magazine at Williamsburg. He argued that the powder needed protection. Many Virginians believed he was disarming them. Armed militia began moving toward the capital. Patrick Henry emerged as the most visible challenger, demanding payment for the powder and threatening force if necessary. Dunmore avoided an immediate battle, but the political relationship between governor and colony never recovered. By June, he had left Williamsburg and taken refuge aboard a British warship. Virginia now had two competing governments. Dunmore still held the King's Commission and claimed lawful authority. The revolutionary conventions created committees, raised troops, and governed without him. The question was no longer whether power would be shared. It was which government could actually control roads, towns, weapons, and men. Norfolk became Dunmore's best opportunity. It was Virginia's largest port, commercially important, strongly connected to Atlantic trade, and home to many loyalists. British ships could support it from the Elizabeth River. From Norfolk, Dunmore could raid Patriot positions, gather supplies, recruit supporters, and threaten the interior. In November 1775, he escalated the conflict by declaring martial law. His proclamation called loyal Virginians to the King's standard and offered freedom to enslaved people owned by rebels if they joined British service. Hundreds fled toward British lines. Some were organized into what Dunmore called the Ethiopian Regiment, commanded by white loyalist officers. For enslaved Virginians, the proclamation offered something the Patriot language of liberty did not: an immediate path out of bondage, though only for those enslaved by rebels, and only through military service to the Crown. For many white Virginia slaveholders, the proclamation transformed political resistance into existential fear. It drove undecided men toward the Patriot side while giving Dunmore new manpower. This is one of the central contradictions of the Virginia Revolution. A movement that spoke of liberty fought against a royal governor who was offering freedom to some enslaved people for military service. Any honest account of Great Bridge has to hold both truths at once. Dunmore's growing force began raiding through the Tidewater region. British regulars, sailors, loyalists, and black soldiers attacked militia positions and seized supplies. To protect Norfolk's southern approach, Dunmore established Fort Murray at the northern end of the Great Bridge crossing. The location was ideal. The southern branch of the Elizabeth River, surrounding marsh, and nearby Great Dismal Swamp narrowed movement into a single causeway. The bridge and road covered roughly 360 yards of marsh and open water. Whoever controlled it controlled the practical land route between Norfolk and most of Virginia. The Virginia Committee of Safety ordered Colonel William Woodford and the 2nd Virginia Regiment toward Norfolk. Woodford was about 41 years old, born in Caroline County, and already possessed something many Revolutionary officers lacked: real military experience. He had served during the French and Indian War. He understood scouting, camps, supply, defensive ground, and the difference between political confidence and battlefield readiness. That experience mattered because Virginia's new army was still being created. Uniforms were inconsistent. Weapons varied. Some men were regular troops, others Minutemen or local militia. The most celebrated Patriot commander in Virginia was Patrick Henry, but operational authority remained tangled between officers and the Committee of Safety. Woodford's assignment required him to manage that confusion while moving toward an enemy who already held a fortified crossing. He advanced cautiously. He gathered intelligence. He brought together the 2nd Virginia Regiment, Culpeper Riflemen, local militia, and eventually North Carolina reinforcements. By early December, roughly 900 Patriot troops were concentrated around Great Bridge, though only part of that force occupied the forward defenses at any one time. Woodford established his main camp south of the bridge near Great Bridge Church. Closer to the crossing, his men built a small breastwork that became known as Fort Liberty. Across the marsh, Dunmore's troops held Fort Murray. Between the two positions lay the bridge, causeway, water, and open ground. Neither side could attack without exposing itself. Woodford faced a serious problem. He had no cannon. Without artillery, he could not easily reduce Fort Murray or drive the British from their works. His supply wagons were also delayed after Loyalists damaged the bridge at Bachelor's Mill, several miles away. An impatient commander might have attacked anyway. Woodford did not. He strengthened his position, sent patrols forward, and waited. That decision is the core of the story. Woodford did not defeat Dunmore by storming the British fort. He made Dunmore attack him. Patriot patrols crossed the area, gathered information, captured prisoners, and kept pressure on the British position. Among the captives mentioned in Woodford's correspondence were black men serving with Dunmore's forces, evidence that the governor's proclamation had already become a military reality. Inside Norfolk, Dunmore received reports that Patriot reinforcements were approaching. If Woodford's army grew stronger, Fort Murray might be isolated. Dunmore decided to strike first. He ordered Captain Samuel Leslie to lead a force south from Norfolk and attack the Patriot position before additional North Carolina troops could make it even stronger. Leslie's force included British regulars, Loyalist troops, and men connected to the Ethiopian regiment. Captain Charles Fordyce commanded the British grenadiers who would make the direct assault. During the night of December 8, British troops moved toward Great Bridge. Woodford's men noticed activity. They saw planks being replaced on the damaged section of the bridge. Commands carried through the darkness. Sentries understood that an attack was coming. Woodford ordered his men ready. This was the moment when poor discipline could have destroyed the position. A nervous sentry could fire too early. Men could crowd the works. Riflemen might waste ammunition at long range. Militia could mistake a probing movement for a full assault and retreat. Woodford kept the defense controlled. His forward guards would warn the main line. The British would be allowed to enter the causeway. Then the Virginians would use the terrain. If this kind of tactical breakdown helps you see familiar history differently, subscribe. The attack at Great Bridge lasted only minutes, but what happened inside those minutes ended a royal government. At dawn on December 9, the British moved. The first exchange began near the bridge as Patriot sentries encountered the advance. One of those sentries became part of the battle's later memory, William "Billy" Flora, a free black Virginian serving with the Patriot forces. Later accounts credit Flora with removing planks from the bridge under fire and delaying the British approach, though some details of the story were recorded decades afterward and remain difficult to verify precisely. What is clear is that black men fought on both sides at Great Bridge for radically different reasons and under radically different conditions. On Dunmore's side were freedom seekers and others serving in the Ethiopian regiment. On Woodford's side was Flora, a free man whose later military service earned praise from officers. The battle cannot be reduced to a simple racial symbol. It reflects the fractured choices created by war, slavery, freedom, loyalty, and survival. After the sentries fell back, Fordyce formed his grenadiers and advanced across the narrow approach. The British expected resistance. They did not fully appreciate how efficiently Woodford's men could concentrate fire along the causeway. The marsh prevented a wide assault. The bridge forced the attackers into a compressed front. There was no cover. There was little room to maneuver around casualties. The closer Fordyce came, the more every American musket and rifle could focus on the same small space. The Patriots opened fire. The British line shook. Men fell. Fordyce was hit in the knee. He recovered, raised his hat, rallied the grenadiers, and drove them onward. This is why Woodford later treated him with respect. Fordyce's decision was courageous. It was also fatal. The British continued forward under increasingly destructive fire. Some reached the ditch and works. Fordyce fell near the Patriot position, reportedly struck by numerous balls. With their captain down and the causeway blocked by wounded and dying men, the grenadiers broke. The supporting troops could not transform the failed charge into another coordinated assault. The British withdrew toward Fort Murray. Woodford's men did not rush recklessly after them across the bridge. He held the position. The attack had failed. His report described the battle as a second Bunker Hill in miniature, with one crucial difference: the Americans kept their post. Bunker Hill, British troops had eventually taken the ground after suffering enormous losses. At Great Bridge, the attackers paid the price and gained nothing. Patriot losses were astonishingly light. Woodford reported only one man wounded in the hand. British casualty estimates vary because different accounts counted regulars, loyalists, and black troops differently. Woodford reported more than 60 killed and wounded. Other reports produced different totals, and Dunmore's own figures were lower. The safest conclusion is that the British suffered dozens of casualties in a short assault, while the Patriot line remained essentially intact. The disparity mattered more than any exact number. Woodford had defeated professional troops without artillery and without exposing his own force to a wasteful attack. After the fighting, Patriot soldiers helped wounded enemies. A contemporary account said British Captain Leslie appeared moved by the care shown to the survivors. Woodford ordered Captain Fordyce buried with military honors. That choice did not erase the brutality of the fight. It demonstrated the kind of officer Woodford wanted his men to believe they were becoming. They had held fire until it mattered. They had maintained their position. They had defeated the attack. Now they would bury a brave enemy with respect. The British position at Fort Murray had become untenable. On the night after the battle, Dunmore's troops abandoned the fort and withdrew toward Norfolk. Woodford entered the works the following morning. The road was open. Patriot forces moved north. Within days, Woodford occupied Norfolk. Dunmore still had ships in the river and forces connected to the fleet, but he could no longer operate as a governor with secure land power. He could raid. He could bombard. He could issue proclamations from ships. He could not govern Virginia. That is the title's payoff. Woodford did not end John Murray's life. He did not capture him. He ended his rule. The Battle of Great Bridge removed the final practical foundation of royal authority in Virginia. The consequences were immediate and destructive. Tension between Dunmore's fleet and Patriot forces inside Norfolk escalated. On January 1, 1776, British ships bombarded the waterfront and landing parties burned buildings. For generations, the destruction of Norfolk was often described mainly as a British act. Modern research and surviving Virginia records show a more complicated and disturbing truth. Dunmore's forces destroyed part of the town, but Patriot troops later burned far more of it under orders intended to deny shelter and supplies to the British. That does not diminish Great Bridge. It changes the moral landscape around its aftermath. Victory did not produce clean decisions. The Patriots gained Norfolk and then helped destroy it. Dunmore's black recruits suffered heavily from combat, disease, and overcrowding aboard ships. Many freedom seekers who reached British lines died of smallpox before they could secure the liberty they had risked everything to pursue. Others eventually evacuated with British forces and built new lives elsewhere. Dunmore continued operating along Virginia's waterways for months, but his political authority was finished. By the summer of 1776, his fleet withdrew from the Chesapeake. Virginia declared independence and adopted a new constitution. The royal governor never returned to power. Woodford's career continued. He entered Continental service, fought in the main army, and rose to brigadier general. At Brandywine in 1777, his brigade fought during the British campaign against Philadelphia. He later served in the South and was captured with the American army at Charleston in 1780. Held aboard a British prison ship in New York Harbor, he died that November. The man who had forced Virginia's royal governor onto the water ended his own life as a prisoner on British water. It is a grim symmetry. But Great Bridge remained his defining victory. The battle demonstrated that Virginia's revolutionary government could raise troops, defend strategic ground, defeat British regulars, and replace royal authority with military control of its own. It also exposed the Revolution's deepest contradiction. Patriot victory helped secure independence for a society in which slavery remained protected. Dunmore's offer of freedom was limited, military, and self-interested. Yet to hundreds of enslaved people it was more tangible than Patriot promises. Woodford's battlefield victory should be remembered alongside that reality, not separated from it. Today, the battle site lies within the modern city of Chesapeake. Roads, neighborhoods, and commerce surround terrain that once narrowed into a wooden crossing through marsh and water. Parts of the historic landscape survive near the Great Bridge battlefield and Waterways History Foundation's preserved area, while state and federal preservation efforts continue protecting fragments of the battlefield. The ground is quieter now. It is difficult to imagine British grenadiers advancing through smoke across a causeway with nowhere to turn. It is difficult to picture Woodford behind an unfinished work, lacking cannon, choosing not to attack. That choice is why the battle matters. He understood that the bridge could do what artillery could not. It would compress the enemy. It would expose them. It would make courage work against the men displaying it. William Woodford did not win by being more aggressive. He won by making the governor's army move where it was weakest. Great Bridge did not end British power in America. It ended royal power in Virginia. One road, one failed charge, one colonel who waited. If this story was worth watching, subscribe and tell us in the comments which overlooked Revolutionary War commander should come next.